So, as expected, there is going to be a lot of news that I'm going to get to in terms of the news of the week, and that once again, I'm going to have to switch the board once to look at the remaining news that happened in the last couple of days. And it was really yesterday when I was kind of got hammered in terms of the numerous rumors and signings that happened around MLS. But the first news that I'm going to talk about is probably one of the biggest news that came out of MLS and probably will have a big effect in terms of whether or not when the season is going to start next year. And that, of course, is that MLS has informed the MLSPA that it will invoke the force majeure clause in the current CBA. And what this basically means is that now MLS and MLSPA will have a 30-day period where they need to be negotiated in good faith, and that if they do not do that in a span of 30 days, the current CBA will be terminated. And that also pretty much means we're going to be back in the same situation where we were just a year ago, and I would say even worse than what we were in a year ago, because now if the CBA is terminated, that means we're going to be now in a lockout situation unless the CBA is going to be agreed upon once again. And when I heard this news, I was definitely very surprised to see MLS decide to do this, and that this really kind of feel like it's a slap in the face for the MLSPA, that what the MLS is doing right now, and that, I have a feeling in this 30 days, unless if both sides will kind of agree on the situation that the current CBA is in, something tells me we are heading for a lockout. I mean, there's been signs where we've seen where the MLSPA and the owners around this league is definitely not happy with each other, and that, the last time when we had the situation where we were on the brink of having a lockout season and that the CBA was literally negotiated at the very last minute, there was still some bad feelings that was shared between both sides, and that the relationship between both of these sides has been fracturing in these past years or two. So I won't be surprised if the MLSPA and that they will basically not take the bait again like they did a couple of months ago, where they're going to think about striking if they don't think that all the things that MLS wants to do in terms of the current CBA is going to agree upon, and that if there is going to be a lockout that is going to be happening, there's no doubt that it's going to definitely harm the league in terms of its growth. And that I understand that maybe when you have a lockout this season, it technically wouldn't be the worst thing, because we know MLS is losing a lot of money, and that if you have a lockout, that means they don't really lose a lot of those revenues and stuff like that. But having said that, that also doesn't attract talent, and that nobody is going to come to MLS if MLS is going to have a lockout and there's not going to be a season whatsoever. And even some of those players that is with the team, they might even think about leaving MLS because they don't want to be part of a league that is currently having a lockout and not having a season. They want to play in with another team from a different league, and that will definitely be a negative effect if there is going to be a possible lockout that is going to be happening. But we shall see in a month time whether or not if both sides is going to agree on this CBA, and we won't have a situation where the CBA is going to be terminated, and we're once again back in the same situation we were last year, which is both sides will have to agree on a new CBA in order for the season to prevent of having a lockout. Now, moving on in terms of the next news, to talk about Matthias Almeida. So, you know how Almeida has been really in the news for the past couple of weeks of him linking with different job down in Mexico. Well, just a couple of days ago, he was heavily rumored to be the next head coach of Cruz Azul, and in fact, all those sources down in Mexico said that it was very close that Almeida was eventually going to go to Cruz Azul. But then yesterday, it was pretty much announced that Almeida says that he has no intention of going back down to Liga MX and coach another team there, and that he is going to be the man of his words and stay with the Quakes and basically remain there at least for two more seasons, because obviously he's under a 4-year contract, and that he's halfway through that contract, and he's definitely kind of honored that. And this kind of just also shows you that Almeida, if there's people that still questioning his loyalty toward the Quakes and whether or not if he's going to just kind of take the easy way out and just go back down to Liga MX and maybe have successful there, I hope that kind of silenced those critics, because this clearly showed that I don't think Almeida is going to leave the Quakes anytime soon, and that if you turn down a job like Cruz Azul, which is one of the more lucrative job down in Liga MX, that really shows you that you are really committed to the project that you are currently in. And that, again, I think if Almeida is going to be once again linked with any other job down in Liga MX, I can safely say that probably isn't going to happen, because we've seen this happen multiple times. Like, this has been something that has happened pretty much all off season, and even during the middle of last season when I remember he was linked with the Rayados job, and that he basically said no to that job at the very last minute and stay as the head coach of the Quakes. Well, now with the way that he basically now turned down multiple Liga MX job, it's safe to say that the next time if there's a Liga MX team that is going to come calling for Almeida, yeah, most likely they are not going to get him, unless if those Liga MX team, which I've heard some Liga MX team have been kind of smart in terms of potentially getting Almeida and basically splashing a bunch of money for the Quakes to be able to get him. But obviously, if there's one thing that I will give credit to the Quakes, and if there's one decision that at least they got it right, is the fact that they don't take that bait, and at least they are asking these Liga MX team and say, well, you want Almeida? How about we'll get some of your player in exchange for that? How about we'll pick up one of your best player in exchange for Almeida? And obviously, most of the time, those Liga MX team basically said, no, I'm not going to give out one of our best player in order to get your head coach, even though we really want it. But, we also want our most important player to stay with the team, because if we get rid of him, even if we're going to get Almeida, it's probably not going to change much of the thing. So, yeah, I think it's pretty clear now. We can say that Almeida is going to stay with the Quakes, and most likely he's going to be at least staying for another, or even fulfill the full 4-year contract that he has been under with the Quakes since 2018. Now, moving on in terms of the next news and talk about some signings. So, Austin FC have signed another goalkeeper. This time they signed Brad Stuver from NYCFC. He has been spending most time as the backup goalkeeper for Sean Johnson, but obviously when you are a long-time backup goalkeeper of a team, most of the time you would want to explore other opportunity and hope that maybe you can get some starting minutes. And I guess maybe that's what Brad Stuver think, that he wants to maybe go to another team so that he can maybe get a chance to get some minutes. And I'm also kind of interested to see how the goalkeeping battle is going to be with Austin FC, because we know that now they have 3 goalkeeper, including 2 of them that were used to be starting goalkeeper in this league, and that I'm very intrigued in terms of seeing this battle between Stuver and Tarbell and see who exactly is going to be the one that's going to win the starting role as the goalkeeper for this expansion team. Now, moving on in terms of the next news is FC Cincinnati. They made a couple of acquisitions in these last couple of days. First, they, of course, acquired Ronald Maturita from NYCFC in exchange for up to $600,000 general allocation money. I kind of mentioned a little bit about this news in my yesterday new moving forward series about NYCFC, and you can clearly see NYCFC is kind of going through a bit of a squad kind of retooling and kind of going through a transitional period by starting to get rid of some of their more important player, and that I think this is definitely a good signing for FC Cincinnati, getting a very decent fullback in the league. And even though they are going to be paying a lot of money for them, he is definitely going to be a guy that's going to do well for FC Cincinnati, and I think he could also be a good replacement for Andrew Gutmann that they lost to the oh god, was it? I think it was the re-entry draft that they lost Andrew Gutman to Atlanta United just a couple of days ago. Now, besides getting Ronald Maturita, they also got Ben Mines off of the waiver draft from the New York Red Bulls and got Cody Cropper off of free agency. I think both of these signings are very, very decent. And, Cody Cropper, he is another goalkeeper that is looking for minutes after he's been as a backup role for an MLS team for a very long time. But just like what I mentioned about Brad Stuver, he's going to have some competition to try and get that goalkeeping spot, because FC Cincinnati definitely have some decent goalkeeper in Shimizu Teton and Spencer Ritchie, and I think that's going to be a very interesting competition to see who's going to be the starting goalkeeper of this team. I mean, for the past 2 seasons, we've seen that Teton and Ritchie has kind of been rotating in terms of that spot of goalkeeper. Well, now you got another goalkeeper coming in. That's going to be even more interesting to see the battle for that goalkeeping spot. And who knows, maybe we're going to see free goalkeeper that is going to be kind of rotating the spot, and that there's going to be some game we're going to see Teton between the stick, and that there's going to be some game we see Ritchie between the stick, and then there's going to be some games that we see Cropper between the stick. So we shall see if that's going to be the case. And of course, Ben Mines, another player that is looking to trying to get minutes, since he couldn't really quite break into the Red Bulls first team, and hopefully him going to FC Cincinnati will get some minutes for him, because he really need to get some minutes with the way that there is definitely some raw talent that this kid has, but he definitely needs some minutes if he wants to continue to improve on his game and try to fulfill his potential that he had coming off of the Red Bulls Academy. Now, the Philadelphia Union have set to so Mark McKenzie to Ghent for $6 million, and that this has been something that's been reported for the past couple of days, that McKenzie was going to be making the jump to Europe, but we didn't know who exactly is going to be the European team that's going to get him. Well, we now know that it is Genk, the one that is going to be getting Mark McKenzie, and that they actually paid a pretty premium to get him by paying the Union $6 million in order to get him. And that, I think this is definitely a good move for both parties, knowing the fact that Mark McKenzie, he's definitely going to get some minutes with Genk, and that he's going to be one of those latest American coming out of MLS and coming out of the youth academy to make the next jump to Europe and continue to develop their game and become starters once they get into Europe and playing for these team. Whereas for the Philadelphia Union, it's another big splash of money in their pocket. I mean, they already got a lot of money off of the Brendan Aronson deal when they sold him to RB Salzburg. Well, now getting $6 million in the money to basically they get Mark McKenzie to Genk is going to continue to increase the amount of money that the Union has in order to replace some of these players. I mean, I know some Union fans are a little bit kind of disappointed that they are selling some of their best player, and that in some way they're kind of getting fleeced by some of these European teams by getting some of their best talent. But that's basically what MLS is nowadays, and that they can of course invest in those money in order to maybe find a good replacement for these guys, or continue to try to invest the academy and bring in the next batch of decent player that they are looking to potentially sell in the next couple of years. Now, another player that came out of the academy and looking to make the jump, and this is another player that comes out of one of the best academy in MLS, and that of course is the FC Dallas Academy, and of course is Brian Reynolds, who we talked about how he was linked with Roma just a couple of days ago, and that Roma was going to pay about $8.7 million in order to get Reynolds from FC Dallas. Well, Juventus now have basically stepped in and say, how that Italian team, one of our arch rival Italian team, trying to offer you $8.7 million to get him. We're gonna pretty much put the price even more higher, and now put it at 7-figure number, or actually not 7-figure, but 8-figure number, and basically they said that we're going to pay you $10 million in order to get Brian Reynolds. Now, from what I also heard from Juventus is that once they do get Brian Reynolds, they are planning to potentially loan him to another team, and I think that's a good idea. The fact that I think if Reynolds does go to Juventus, most likely he's not going to be kind of like what Weston McKennie was when he made the move to Juventus, and that he's not going to get like much regular minutes with that team. But if he does get to loan to another team, he's definitely going to get some minutes, and who knows, if he does do well once he does go on loan with Juventus, he could potentially get back to Juventus and be kind of in the same starting 11 that Weston McKennie is. I mean, who would have thought that a couple of years ago we would see one of the best team in Europe in Juventus, and we have two American that could potentially be in the starting 11 of this team. But that's kind of the reality of how it is right now, and that, you know, I will say that the U.S. men's national team, you know, as much as I've been very frustrated with this team, and also very frustrated with how the Soccer Federation have basically they underachieve with all these talent that they have in their disposal. I'm actually kind of excited to see these young batch of talent that either coming from MLS that eventually make the jump to Europe, or are currently in Europe and getting regular minutes for some of these biggest team in Europe. I can't wait to see how they're going to look like, and that I'm really excited to see that next year when we get to the World Cup qualifying, and hopefully this time we actually does qualify for the World Cup in 2022, to see what this young batch of talent is going to go through, because there's no doubt the U.S. men's national team is having a golden generation right now with all these young talent, and that I'm just hoping with this young talent that we have, it could actually come through, and that it actually lives up to the potential of actually delivering. Because we've seen before where just because you have a good young batch of talent and you're kind of going through a golden generation period, if you don't do well in the international stage, and if you kind of underachieve as what we've seen with the U.S. men's national team for the past couple of years, that's where it can get very frustrating, and hence this is why I'm kind of a little bit disconnected toward the U.S. men's national team, because of the failure that it has happened in these past couple of years, and that the high potential of the team to become one of the best team, if not the best team in the CONCACAF region, and it just haven't shown, just kind of makes me very frustrated with the way how it is. But we shall see if that is going to be the case. But anyway, kind of got a little bit off track in terms of talk about the national team, to talk about the final news on this board, and the final news that I'm going to talk about before we get into the reports and the rumor of this week in terms of the news of the week episode, is that Inter Miami has officially re-signed Brek Shea just a couple of days ago. And I know I've been kind of making fun of Brek Shea, and that it's not very hard to definitely make fun of how Brek Shea's career has been, and that he's been kind of a journeyman throughout MLS, and that he's always earns the nickname of being kind of like the troll that always end up finding a team in MLS. But this past year, he probably had his best year ever since his rookie season with FC Dallas, scoring 4 goals for Inter Miami. And I think when you were able to do well and also become one of the top goal scorers of this team, it was no surprise that Inter Miami was going to potentially re-sign him. And who knows, maybe Brek Shea have finally found a good home at Inter Miami, and maybe that the sensational season that he had last year could continue to trend. It's like heading into next season. But that being said, he is now 30 years old, and that he is approaching that kind of period where you know, if you're going to eventually be at your peak of the game, you better do it now or never, because if you once again kind of start slowing down again, most likely, yeah, you're probably going to not be in a good amount of form as you have been in the past, as the longer you are now approaching your mid-30s. But that being said, I am now going to switch the boards and look at the numerous reports and transfer rumors that has happened in these past couple of days. So before I get into talk about the rumors that happened in the past couple of days, I just want to quickly say that I'm kind of fed up in terms of hearing these reports and hearing these articles talk about Messi and Suarez eventually going to be coming to MLS. And I get that a couple of days ago, Messi did say that he was eventually going to think about finishing his career in the US and maybe in MLS, but that doesn't mean that you could just say, oh, yep, Messi basically said that he's going to come to the US, so we're just going to now say that he is pretty much confirmed to come to this league in a couple of years of time. Like, first of all, nothing has confirmed whatsoever that he is going to be coming to the US once he finishes his career with Barcelona. And second of all, this has been something that they've been talking about for what, the past five years, and nothing has even came close to Messi potentially coming to MLS. So why in the God's name are they continue to pushing these articles? And that it's kind of almost like when you try to tell a joke to your friend and you tell it the first time and your friend might be laughing at the joke, but when you tell them maybe like 5 or 10 times, or even pretty much every time in the last 5 years, they will start not only feeling that joke is getting old and it's not funny anymore, but they kind of feel annoyed that the fact that you're just basically telling the same joke you basically told like 10,000 times for the last 5 years. Well, that's basically what this is with the Messi rumor that he's going to come to MLS, and that unless if there is a day where there's legit source saying that he is going to be coming to MLS, and unless if I actually see Messi walking out a door and put the pen in paper to sign a contract with one of these MLS clubs, I refuse to believe that Messi isn't going to be coming to MLS and that he potentially is going to be finishing his career here in the US. But that being said, after my little rant about that, the whole Messi shenanigans that MLS is trying to push an agenda toward, let's talk about some of the rumors that has happened and talk about some actual legit rumors that could actually come to place. And one of them is that the Red Bulls have received offer from Tijuana to acquire Kaku for $3 million. If you're the Red Bulls in this situation, you have to accept it. I mean, it's pretty clear that Kaku pretty much has no future with this team, and rather basically just keep him for another year and basically take a salary hit while at it. They might as well just kind of sell him, and that even though I know $3 million is definitely a huge loss of the profit that they got him just a couple of seasons ago, they were never going to get the same amount of money that they paid for Kaku in the first place and then basically sell him off to another team. So I think if you're the Red Bulls and if they're actually smart about this, they got to accept this deal and just kind of move on, and they get a $3 million out of this one, where I thought when Kaku was potentially going to be so down to Liga MX, or maybe even let go by this team, they could have easily got nothing out of them. So to get $3 million is actually much better than compared to potentially maybe not getting anything out of him after the amount that they paid to get him a couple of years ago. Now, LAFC is reported set to sign South Korean right back Kim Moon-hwan from the Korean League, and that, from what I heard, he's a very decent player that could do very well once he comes to MLS, and that this also pretty much is another sign that LAFC is clearly focusing their defense and just adding as much fullback and center back as possible. I mean, remember how just a couple of months ago where it seemed like the defense and the fullback depth was a huge issue for LAFC? Well, ever since they started to kind of sign a lot of players in the defensive end, especially in the fullback position, they're pretty much now stacked in terms of that role. And that I think once Kim Moon-hwan does come to this team, he's going to have a lot of competition in terms of getting that spot, because there's just so much depth now that this LAFC team in terms of the fullback role that it just makes you wonder, are they forgetting that their main thing that they need to focus is maybe thinking about signing some depth in terms of their forwards, because their depth in terms of the attack isn't as good as what many people think that of course is the case. Now, Atlanta United is rumored to sign Ronald Hernandez from Aberdeen, and this is a very interesting and kind of a strange rumor, because usually when we see Atlanta decide to get these young South American player, and Ronald Hernandez is one of those young South American player, I believe he's 23 years old right now, they will usually get them down from South America, and that those players are playing with a team either in Argentina or even in Uruguay, but they are actually getting a young South American player from across the pond, and that I don't really know a lot about Ronald Hernandez, and that whether or not if he can be a good fit once he comes to MLS, but we shall see whether or not if this rumor is going to be true, and whether or not if Atlanta is going to potentially sign another young South American player to add to their roster. Now, the LA Galaxy is still in negotiation with Boca Junior for Christian Pavone, and this is kind of interesting too, knowing the fact that just a couple of days ago, it looked like it was pretty much confirmed that Pavone was not coming back to the Galaxy and that he was going to be returning to Boca Junior. But then just recently, it says that report that confirmed that he's leaving the Galaxy to return to Boca Junior is actually not true, and that they're actually still in negotiation in terms of potentially the Galaxy maybe getting Christian Pavone outright, or maybe be asking Boca Junior if they can work on another loan for him for heading into next season. But either way, if there is no more reports about how the Galaxy maybe made a breakthrough, and that maybe they could keep Pavone by the end of this year, or even in these next couple of days, most likely Pavone is coming back to Boca Junior. His loan is actually expiring on January 1st, so if there is no deal that's been reached by then, yeah, Pavone is going to be coming back to Boca Junior, and the Galaxy will have to force to let go of him. And knowing the price that Boca Junior asked the Galaxy to pay in order to get Pavone, that is definitely very, very steep. And knowing the fact the Galaxy have so much more issue on their roster, I think it's probably for the best that they decided to not pay that amount, because if they pay that amount, they might not have enough money to fix some of the biggest issue that this team has, which obviously is the defensive part of their game. Now, speaking of defense, Inter Miami defender Andres Reyes might not return next season. Remember, he is currently on loan with Inter Miami from a Colombian club, but it seems like Inter Miami, when they try to maybe buy him outright, the price might be a little bit too steep, so therefore that might be the reason why Andres Reyes is not returning next season for Inter Miami. And it's such a shame, because I thought Reyes was one of the best defender for this Inter Miami team, and if he is not going to be returning next season, there's definitely going to be more a little bit of an issue in terms of depth, and that there's going to be someone that's going to have to fill him in that center back role, because he was a regular starter for this Inter Miami team. And that, knowing the fact that they did lose a couple of pieces on the defensive side, Inter Miami, they need to do something during this offseason to kind of boost that depth that is started to look a little bit shallow in terms of the defensive end. Now, the San Jose Earthquakes, and yes, the Quakes are actually for once rumored with a player. I mean, I thought this offseason the Quakes were going to be doing what they usually always do, which is they're probably not going to sign anybody and not even bother in terms of rumor with anyone, and just kind of be complacent that the squad that they had is going to once again compete next season. Well, for once they are actually rumored with a player, and they're actually rumored with Javier Chilos Lopez from Chivas. And this move kind of tells me that, yeah, it's pretty clear that Matthias Almeida is trying to recreate that 2018 Chivas team, and trying to bring most, if not all, those players to this Quakes team, and hope that maybe that will be successful. But that being said, one thing that I've also heard about this guy is that he's been having a lot of disciplinary issue when he was with Chivas. And I remember the last time when there is a player coming down from Liga MX that have disciplinary issue by the name of Brian Fernandez to go to the Portland Timbers. Yeah, that did not end well, did it? I mean, Fernandez, he did had a decent time with the Timbers and did bang in some goals there, but yeah, just 6 months after he was signed for the Timber for such a large amount of fees, he was basically let go of the team, and we from this day on have not heard anything about him and where exactly he is actually playing. And I'm just kind of fear that if the Quakes are going to potentially sign him, and if Chivas is going to ask the Quakes to pay a lot of money to get him, yeah, I just feel like this is a huge gamble that the Quakes are playing, and that they hope that his ill discipline during his time with Chivas is not going to continue when he is signed with the Quakes. Because if he's going to continue to have that ill discipline, and that some even said that he's kind of a lazy kind of player, I am definitely very concerned with the signing. And that I mean, I know I want to eventually sign players, improve the attack, but the last thing I want is to sign players that have ill discipline and are not actually be very working hard when they're playing for this team, and kind of be another Vaco in terms of it. I mean, remember when Vaco, where there's been times where he could be a decent player for the Quakes, but there's been times where I'm always frustrated with him being very selfish and being very lazy when he's going through the attack, and just something tells me this could be another Vaco that we are signing if that is going to be the case. Now, moving on, in terms of the last news on this news of the week, is that FIFA has canceled U17 and U20 World Cup due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This is not a big surprise, knowing the fact that with the tournament was supposed to start in a couple of weeks, there was no way in the world they were going to do that, especially with a global pandemic. And that, I guess maybe the, I know a lot of these kids that are going to be playing in this tournament, they'll be disappointed that this tournament is not going to take place. But the good news is, at least the Olympics is going to happen this year, or at least that's what we think, that it's going to be happening in Tokyo this year, and that all those kids that might not be able to play in this U17 and U20 World Cup, at least they can play in the Olympics. I mean, the Olympics is basically kind of a U22 World Cup, with the exception that certain teams can basically add a couple of senior player into their team, but really it's kind of a glorified U23 World Cup in the Olympics, and that at least those kids that don't get a chance to shine on the world stage during this World Cup will get a chance to do it during the Olympics, that hopefully it will happen during this summer of next year. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the news of the week. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these news alongside with the other news that I had on the previous board. And if there's any news that I missed on this board or on the previous board, let me know in the comments below. But until then, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next time.